Hello and welcome to another We Had Movies, and this is your host Mo Yagi, and
Eric Leon.
today we have another special guest appearance from Iris Novak. This time, hopefully, she won't sound like she's coming through a car phone, and she'll be a little bit clearer and a little bit louder, and yeah. So, Iris, how are you doing?
You know, Not great, honestly. So, and is it okay for me to talk about it?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
absolutely.
So, as you both know, I'm from a small town. And last year, I had a man wrongfully convicted for brutally murdering my mother. And now, on the anniversary of her death, everyone around me is dying at the hands of a masked killer. And I keep getting these creepy phone calls from him referring to my mom's murder, which is so weird because her alleged killer is in prison and he doesn't have access to a cell phone. And on top of that, my boyfriend is being super, super weird and he's making me feel guilty for not wanting to bang him while I'm processing my mother's murder. My dad is out of town on business and I don't even know what he does for a living. There's a deranged tabloid reporter who wrote a book about my mom's murder sniffing around my high school. The local police department consists of a decrepit old man and a 25-year-old bumbling idiot. And to be completely honest, I'm starting to get worried about my safety. Anyways, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Not too
I have
bad.
a follow-up though. I have a
Oh,
follow-up though, and I think
okay.
I'm sure our audience wants to know too. Do you like scary movies?
Oh, so it was you. It was you all along.
But it's always the people that are closest to you, isn't it?
Yeah, apparently so.
So that was a fun way of Iris introducing the movie that we're talking about today. So yeah, because of it being, right after Halloween, we decided to do scary movie, and this time we took a
Scream.
movie, a very popular '90s movie, Scream, and that was the summary basically that Iris just gave by describing her awful, awful journey this weekend.
Just
Apparently,
my day,
I,
you know.
oh,
I
just a
actually have some
day, just a
trivia
day.
about the
And,
Yeah,
name and the confusion there, but I will leave that for later.
please.
I mean, summed it up pretty nicely. I would like to add that like um there's some really fun relationships in this film. A lot of different connections. Like yes, you do have the main story and the main character, and everybody's trying to either have sex with her or murder her. It's something like that. But I also like the interactions between the guys in this film, particularly because they're, even though, okay, spoiler alert, they are, the two of the close friends are murderers. It doesn't come off that way because they're still behaving like everyday teenage boys. And if anything, Matthew Lillard is just like
He's the
hysterical.
MVP. He's the
Yeah,
MVP of this movie.
yeah, just takes
Speaking of
on.
what you're saying, so like this, when I watched this when I was young, obviously I didn't pick up on any of the adult themes whatsoever. I didn't understand them. I watched this way too young. Um, but now as an adult, I know that Kevin Williamson wrote it and he's the creator of Dawson's Creek. And watching it now with you, that's all I could feel when I was watching it was that it felt very much like it was Dawson and Pacey.
Hmm.
They were on a murdering spree, and Joey was the main character, Joey Potter. Everything that Nev Campbell said, Sidney Prescott, the main character, I could hear in Joey's voice. Like
Absolutely,
it,
yeah.
it was all very Dawson coded. And
Well, I
like
was
and the
gonna
whole like
say
it's all
the
about the movies, right?
yeah, I was gonna say like the two main characters, like that are played by Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard, are basically Eric and I. Like that's what we're doing right now. We are both
Yeah,
big
exactly.
movie fans who love talking about films and how they've affected our lives and basically changed the way we see things.
I love
And
that the characters that you related most to were the two boys who were
we're the serial
orchestrating a
killers.
murder spree.
Well, no, but it's interesting because that's the ones that you connect to because they're the ones who are the most interesting, right? But at the end of the day, I wouldn't say that I'm a sociopath, and I'm
No,
not gonna I'm not disillusioned like the characters are, but like,
No, I don't think you're Billy and Stu. I think you're Randy.
well, yeah,
Randy's the viewer,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
no,
Randy.
but no, I would say in this scenario though, you are the Randy of this group because you
Oh,
know more about the film and the background of this film than we do,
literally,
right?
how dare you? I'm Sydney.
I mean, you're a
Okay,
little bit of
fine,
both. You're like Sydney and
fine.
Randy. Yeah, you're both.
Before we get like super into it, now that we're talking about this, I feel like my prior segment, which Spice Girl are you, could actually come into this, except
Hmm.
it's which Scream murder are you?
Hmm.
Like, which dramatic murder orchestrated by these 16-year-old boys is your murder? Like which one was the one that like shocked you the most or that like you
I
were
mean, the one that
the
stuck out for me definitely was the garage door one. Because I
yeah.
always was in such disbelief of like somebody dying that way. But actually, looking it up, I mean, garage doors are very dangerous, and the fact that our parents let us play around those things is nuts. Like, because apparently a garage door dropping on someone is like 200, 300 pounds of weight just slamming onto you, so that could really,
Yeah.
really hurt.
Let alone
um
you being stuck in the cat door and pulled up and
yeah, and
snapped in
pulled up,
half.
right, like, and thinking that the motor wouldn't be strong enough, but I mean it's meant to pull up a certain weight of a door, so yeah, it will crush you, yeah, for
Well,
sure.
I'm
I,
torn. There were two murders that like really shook me and I felt connected to. The first was like
Hmm.
the one that I could see happening to me was Kenny the cameraman who gets, sliced and diced and then they just leave him on top of the van
Hmm.
when
Well,
Gail
that's
goes
that's
to
also
start the van.
strange too. Yeah, that was strange too. Like, what, like, I like that they did that for like the purpose of making it scarier for the film, for the sake of the
yeah.
film.
Because
But
he's a
in
surprise.
reality, after you murder someone, do you really want to lift their entire body weight to put them on the
Well,
roof of a car? Like, it makes absolutely
that's
no
just it.
sense.
That actually goes to some of the trivia in the movie. That there's a scene, a critical scene
Ooh,
that actually goes deep into
Okay.
how Kenny was killed, but it was cut from the movie. So that's
I
why
knew there was something about that
that
scene.
whole scene is awkward because of that. Yeah.
So what's
Oh,
the tea? Spill the tea
I
on
don't
Kenny.
I don't know what the actual scene is, but
Oh,
I just
he
um,
know that
wasn't he
yeah, that it
wasn't
was
just
cut
supposed to
and
have his throat
that's why it's
slit.
very awkward.
Oh.
release the Wes Snyder cut or like or Wes Craven cut.
He
Right?
should have he should have been on the roof of the car when he died, but I guess what happened is he got his throat slit just defending or just opening the door, basically,
The
walking
point
out of
there
the van.
being, I just really resonated with someone just like trying to eat their Cheetos, performing surveillance on a high
Hmm.
school party, and then,
Yeah, there's nothing
He
creepy about a
guy
man
doing
eating
his job,
Cheetos
yeah.
while observing teenage kids at a party. Yeah, nothing creepy
and then
about
the
that.
other iconic murder I thought was Stu's murder by Sydney at the very end, where she finally,
Hmm.
gets her wits together and whoops some ass. And she drops the TV on his head and electrocutes him. I'm like, I also feel very seen by that.
That's a pretty good way to kill somebody. Yeah, I definitely like that one. Well, especially with knowing how much those TVs weighed, especially those CRT. Like, the kids now don't even understand. Like, if this plasma
No,
drops on me, like, whatever, I'll get back up. But no, that CRTV, that thing weighed.
no, that's crushing bones.
Yeah, that's
Like,
gonna, like,
That yeah,
we
that's
we can't
breaking
even
you in
get rid of
half.
the one in our room because none of us want to carry it. Like, it's
yeah,
just that big. Yeah.
that's
Um,
true. That it
yeah.
just occurred to me that we have one in our home right now, and that is actually a way that I could die in our home.
Well, it's not put high enough to drop on anybody's head, but
True,
yeah,
true. I
particularly,
need to be
yeah.
careful when I'm in there. It's our garage door.
There's always, see, and that's the thing, there's so many more dangerous things back then because now there's so many more safety regulations because of accidents that would have happened with things like garage doors. And so I could see things that prevent a lot of these things now, so it wouldn't be as easy to murder someone with a garage door,
Yeah.
let's say.
And I feel like this movie was so perfect for its time for that reason. Like they've
Mhm.
done, the sequels that are sort of in like modern times, and it's just like it doesn't hit the same way.
No, I mean, they just had it at the right time of like
Mm.
technology because they did have the cell phone still. So the cell phone and the voice changer, those were very specific futuristic
What are
sort
you
of,
doing with a cellular telephone, son?
yes, technologies that only wealthy people had. So yeah, that's interesting. um yeah, and those little Motorola phones too, it's so funny. Like, I say little, but they were like they were probably triple
Huge.
the
Yeah.
size, yeah, of what we have now. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's at least an introduction of that, which is interesting, and the way you can play around with phones. The only thing is that every time somebody answers the phone, it's always a home phone that they're answering. Like, hello, who's that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, nowadays, no one would even check their phone. If somebody was
Nobody answers
calling,
their phone
no
anymore.
one answers their phone. You even if you knew, like, you knew it was your parents calling, you'd be like, yeah, no. And it's like, hang up. Yeah, so yeah, it's a very, very different world. I mean, I know that they kept making these Scream movies and they kept playing with that concept, so they definitely didn't get the slasher part doesn't fall short, because at the end of the day, the way people die by a knife is the same. It's like,
Did
that's
you
not going
guys
to
see this
change, you
when you
know.
were younger?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I
I
was,
saw it when
well,
it technically came out on video, like after
yeah.
its theatrical release. Um,
Yeah, I saw it when I
yeah.
was younger, but I don't think I remember it. I remember it more since I watched it with you when I was in my like 20s, right? When, or
Yeah.
30s. Yeah.
I definitely remember like I was completely shocked by the twist. Like I mean,
Mhm.
again, like I saw it really young, so obviously. But you know what? I feel like even if I was to see this for the first time now, having not seen any movies like it, I still would have been. It wouldn't have occurred to me that like because like they make Billy seem so suspicious, sort of at the beginning and a little bit in the middle, but then
There's
they're like
there's
Pretty
a
Little
lot of
Liars
things.
level like analysis to like clear him, like what they set
Mhm.
up, like when they have when she's first attacked and Billy comes to the scene of or comes to her house, right? And he has the cell phone on him so that then the cops have to check his phone and clear him because there's no phone calls made on his phone or whatever. I was like, that is full Pretty Little Liars insanity. Like for a
Yeah, like
16-year-old boy to be like, I
really,
want to kill everyone I know and I need to make sure that no one thinks it's me. So like
like really well planned. Like, oops, did I drop my cell phone? And it's
yeah,
like,
and I remember
yeah.
as a kid, like when you realize that it's him, I was like, oh, what? But his phone. Like,
I mean, there was a couple of other hints along the way, but I mean, like the scene and one of my favorite scenes is the one where they're in the video store, right? And they're all talking about the different
yes.
films, and he's talking about how, like, you guys need to watch Prom Night. Like, this movie obviously did a good job of also bringing up a lot of old slasher films
Yep,
that
pays homage to them. Yeah,
we
absolutely.
recommend people to definitely watch them. Even like to the point where they had a janitor at one point in one scene where he was dressed like Freddy Krueger, and literally the principal
Mhm.
calls him Freddy. He's like, Freddie, go home. All right. Or something like that. Anyway,
But
but
there's lots of references and nods to either Wes Craven's previous work
yeah,
or
Mhm.
just or just slasher movies in general, right?
slasher movies in general. Yeah. But what I was going to say is, like, they did like a good job here where they, um, yeah, they like, for example, Skeet Ulrich, him being selected as being the kind of villain is not that far off, because they kind of picked him to look a little bit like a younger Johnny Depp from like Friday the 13th. So like,
Mhm.
he kind of, you know what I mean? Like, so everybody kind of, or no, it would be Nightmare on Elm Street. Sorry, it was on Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh my
Yep.
God, I'm mixing up movies. See, I'm gonna get murdered now for this.
Yeah, you're not a very good Billy. He would never mix those movies up.
No. And so you have, yeah, your Nightmare on Elm Street character. And so he's supposed to be kind of like this like badass boyfriend who doesn't really give a fuck and just kind of does whatever he wants. And but then in that moment in the video store, he kind of gives off this like cruel, violent kind of like look and almost like behavior with Randy when he's talking about like when he's accusing him, basically, like he's like, "You're the killer," and yeah, you would
Well,
think like
Randy,
most friends would react, like in a way where they'd be like, "Wait a second, what are you calling me a killer for? You could be a killer too." But the way he was defending himself, it still like gave off a little bit of hint, like, "Oh, this guy is a little like he's not the same around his
He was
girlfriend."
definitely more believable than Stu as a killer. Like, do
Yeah,
we even know why Stu was involved? Like,
no,
I have a
yeah.
feeling I know why he
oh,
seems yes. Again, going back to the trivia of the movie, Skeet was actually a little bit unaware that this was considered a horror comedy movie, so he played the role as serious as possible.
Mm.
oh,
Yes.
that makes sense.
So when you look back on it and you see kind of like Matthew Lillard giving a kind of half comedic performance there, it's because he's fully aware that there is supposed to be some comedic elements in this. And they specifically bring someone like him in to provide comedic relief as kind of like the
Yeah, because
offsetting Skeet.
I was,
But then if you think about it, if he's thinking this is a serious movie, then it kind of explains a little bit of how intense he
yeah.
plays the role, right?
Yeah.
I think like I'm
Stupid.
wondering too, yeah, stupid. That's my favorite quote of the whole movie. I'm sorry if my traumatized life is an inconvenience to you and your perfect existence. Stupid. So I was just wondering because like I noticed too when we were watching it this time that because I know from seeing the movie so many times, like I'm aware of who's killed by Stu and or I think who's killed by Stu and who's killed by Billy, depending on where they are in the scene. And it felt to me like when I knew Stu was on the phone, his lines were goofier. Like
Mhm.
even though it's the
Mhm.
same ghost face voice, like it just and I wondered if that was like if the actors actually got to do
That's
the voice
actually
changer.
a good challenge. Let's do that. Let's try
As
to
as
figure out who
as far as
was.
I know, they actually had a separate actor doing the phone
Oh,
calls. There was
okay.
Right,
one
right,
in
right. So they
there
had a
wasn't
separate
in
actor,
one
but
scene, there wasn't one scene where Skeet actually did do a phone call.
Hmm.
Um, but for the most part, they actually had a separate actor doing the phone calls. And
Oh, that's less
interestingly enough,
fun.
they did not meet that actor.
Oh,
Nobody that was part of the cast actually met the guy that
you
was
mean the
doing the
real
phone
ghost
calls.
face?
Yeah, exactly. As to kind of add like another layer of mystique and mystery to who this guy was. Like
funny.
they truly never found out who the fuck this guy was.
But okay, but let's play the real game here. Like if we're talking about it being in the movie, who do you think was talking to, let's say, Drew Barrymore in the first scene, like in the first, like who was it who was on the phone at the beginning?
I thought it was Billy
You thought it was Billy?
because yeah, I don't know why. I just oh no, I do know why. It's because when they have the scene where the kids are all at the fountain and they're talking about Drew Barrymore and her boyfriend being killed, Tatum or somebody brings up that Stu used to date Casey. And he was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, that was a million years ago. Like, I don't even care about that." So I think Stu would have been the one to kill the boyfriend at least, while
Right.
Billy's
That
on the
makes sense.
phone
Yep.
because he would have wanted to be
Yeah.
the one to do that. That was what I thought in that scene. And also I felt like the beginning scene wasn't funny. Like it was more more scary, right? Like in how like the dialogue was on the phone. Like yeah, they're kind of goofing around at first, but then it gets like I don't know, it didn't feel as goofy to me. So to
It's
me
kind
it
of
felt
funny
like it was
though that
Billy.
also by trying to figure out who was the voice on the phone while the other person was murdering, you're also almost dissecting like their reasoning for why they did the killings, because in your mind it's like, well, it has to have been Stu that did it because he wouldn't have murdered his own girlfriend. He would want to kill the guy who dated his girl. But like that's
No,
logically,
he could have killed Casey too,
yeah, he could
right?
have killed both of them.
Like
And I
to me,
mean,
he killed them both. That was my thinking
but
is that
I
he
don't
did the
think so.
killing.
I think one of
No.
them was no. I think one of them was waiting by the window and then turned around and then rushed her.
Mm,
Um, and then somebody else, because the other one ran by, I think, and then she saw him and then she hid, and then
right.
another one popped up. So I think that both of them were there. But yeah, I guess we don't know. Like Eric, did you find out about that? Like, do we know who
That
was?
no, I didn't
No, okay.
I wasn't able to
I
find
almost
anything
don't. I
regarding
almost don't
that.
want to know for sure
No,
because I like
no,
the
no.
speculation more.
It's fun to have it a little bit like disconnected and not real, like a little bit
Who
surreal.
killed the principal?
Um,
First of all, like, why did the principal have to die? Like,
exactly,
that was so
exactly.
weird to me
That's
because
what you
like the
really have to ask.
principal,
Yeah,
the
like
principal didn't have
There's
any
another explanation
contact.
for that.
okay,
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So one of the producers, Bob Weinstein,
Mm.
um,
oh,
he no, there wasn't that one. It's the brother. But
Yeah, but
anyway,
I mean, anyways.
he noticed that nobody died within a 30-minute period and said someone's got to die. So
you know what's
Okay,
funny
so
is that when he
it makes
said,
unfortunately,
sense now.
you know what's funny is he
Henry
said Bob
Winkler unfortunately is the
Weinstein.
one that had to eat it because I guess it was just his time at that point.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah,
But like,
but
I guess it
yeah,
was.
it really
I think
was
it was
just
a
one of
little like
those
a red
things
herring,
where
right? Like just to throw people off. Like it's like, you know, because it's like here, suspect the principal for a few minutes, and then
but they
actually,
do that throughout the
bah,
entire movie, right? Like in one
yeah,
scene,
Yeah.
the sheriff is wearing similar shoes to Ghostface, right? So it makes you
hmm
wonder,
Hmm.
is he
Yeah.
Ghostface, right? So
right,
they keep you guessing throughout the entire movie up until that last scene where you find out that it's literally two killers instead of just one.
yep,
Well, and I
yeah.
guess it makes sense that so the principal dies right before the house party, and Billy doesn't show up to the house party until later. So I guess that's how that gets explained. But then it's like, Billy, why'd you kill the principal? You know, like,
I just want to go back on this though, because when Eric was like defending Bob Weinstein, saying, "Well, it was his brother, not the actual Weinstein." It's like saying, like, okay, we're not talking about that Hitler, we're talking about Bob Hitler. That's a different.
Well,
Like,
I
I'm
mean,
pretty sure they're the same person.
it's not the Hitler. It's not a Hitler family operation, right?
Isn't it? I don't know. I don't know.
so
Yeah,
alleged. We don't know for sure.
yeah, we don't know for
Um,
sure.
so the other thing, you mentioned the police chief, and he also like killed me watching this again because like that was a character I didn't even notice like the first, 10 times I saw this movie. But this time I'm like so cognizant of the older characters because I feel old. And so,
Mhm.
and I just, this, I think one of my favorite scenes of this whole movie is when the chief and Dewey are on the sidewalk outside and they're just trying to figure out like what's going on. And Dewey's eating an ice cream cone and the chief is
Yeah,
smoking. And every time he goes to smoke his cigarette,
yeah, because
Dewey
like
takes a lick off his cone.
when they did Scary Movie, they did this thing where they made Dewey like it's like even more like
They
it's
made him
supposed
mentally challenged.
mentally challenged, right? And it was like too far because
Hmm.
to be honest, he was already silly enough in the original film that like
Yeah.
Yeah.
going that like trying to stretch that out to make it even funnier really just was like too much. It was like eating chocolate with chocolate. You know what I mean? Like it was just like, okay, you need to mix it up a bit or something. But yeah, it was just a lot. Like, he's hanging out in his room with the vacuum cleaner instead of he
It would have
comes out
been
of
more funny, I think. I mean, this
yeah.
isn't a scary movie episode, but it would have been more funny if like in Scary Movie. No, you know what? I don't know. I don't know what would have been more funny. I just know they
No,
didn't bill
no,
it well.
it's not about to discussing what would have been funnier. It's just the fact that they kind of tried to spoof something that was
Yeah.
already a spoof. And that's my
Yeah.
opinion on it. Is like
I felt that way
looking
too.
looking at Scream, it's a scary movie, but not really. It's kind of clumsy, right? Like the main villain, he keeps falling over and tripping over stuff and hurting himself, and he gets hit
Well,
with a vase, and he
the movie is so
he's
meta. Like
the
yeah.
like you have to
Yeah.
look at like a lot
well
of
meta in the
the
sense that like it's being a killer is not about being bigger or stronger or like a ghost or whatever. It's about it's the determination, right? So at the end
well,
of the day, it was just the fact that they were determined to kill someone, that's why it was so scary. Is like that's where violence is scariest, is like when somebody is like, you can see it in their face, they're about to kill you, right?
right.
So that's really, I think, what they really brought out in this film, and that's what's supposed to be really scary, is not who it is that was doing it. And it wasn't really necessarily the ghost mask either that was scary. It was just the element of somebody's determination to kill someone
I
grotesquely,
think what happens
right?
with this movie that really differentiates. First of all, this movie really invigorated the slasher movies all over again. I
Hmm.
mean, if
Yes.
you look at ones previously, I would consider them B movies at the very most. But
Hmm.
you look at Scream, and it basically takes all horror movie tropes and throws them out the
Yes.
window, um, completely subverting the genre, like
Hmm.
completely, which I think draws in a ton of people automatically.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think if
I mean,
anything,
to the
if
point of
you're
even
new to a slasher
discussing the
film,
rules of a horror
yeah,
movie, right? Like nothing
yeah.
gets as meta as that, right? Um,
And if you're new to
and
slasher films, like this is a perfect film to watch because it introduces you to so many other things and even talks about those films and how they kind of affected people. And
well,
like, you know,
you look at the rules that he lists off about, oh, you don't have
right?
sex with anybody, you don't drink or do drugs, or you don't say I'll be right back, because every single one of those
Yeah. So
things in other movies
just
has
to go
resulted in
back on
someone
that,
dying.
those are the rules to stay alive in a horror
Hmm.
movie, right?
Exactly.
You have to be a virgin. You have to, yeah. And then when Sydney finally loses her virginity, it's like, okay, well, she's up for grabs now, but she's
Now you
not.
can die.
So, spoiler alert, she doesn't die.
Yeah, Sydney not dying is important because that's like again the scream girl that has to carry on the story. And I think that's a trope that they kept from all the other, like from Halloween and stuff like that. Is like you have to have your main character, she gets away, so she can come back and fight another day. And again, it's all about her determination to live. There's a lot about, for me in my head, is a lot of towards being determined, and it's really what it's
Well,
about. It's like
the
either
fact that they
your survival instincts kick in the best when you have to survive, right? And then like vice versa, your killer instincts really kick in when you're like forced in a situation where you've been murdering and getting away with it, right? Like he murdered her mom a year ago and he's
well,
still on the on the loose, right?
and that plays a really big role in who Sydney is, because
Mm-hmm.
her mother's murder plays a huge role in shaping Sydney's character, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
just it her past pain, her past traumas and pain, um, really resurface in these new tragedies that are occurring right around with with the people that she
Yeah,
knows,
that's
right?
an interesting
So it's
point, and I think it's cool too because like I've seen all three of these movies. I often like will do a Scream binge, right? And I watch them all, and I
mhm,
forget that like certain things don't come up in this movie that come up in the second one, right? Like they show Cotton
Mm-hmm.
Weary, who's the accused murderer, who's in
yep,
prison, and I thought he was in this movie more, but
Mm-hmm.
he's not. He's in the
he's
other
not
ones, right? So
exactly,
like that I
yeah.
completely forgot about. But yeah, like I thought the movie did a really good job of, like you said, kind of introducing Sydney's past as a character rather than like shoving it down your throat at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of got like bits and pieces. You didn't find out right away that she was dealing with this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you
Or that her
learn
Exactly,
more
and
dad,
about her mom.
that
it's
her
just
dad was a
slowly
drug
throughout the
dealer,
movie
right?
as little bits start getting revealed. Either
Mm.
Tatum saying, "Well, it's kind of like the murder last year," where it doesn't, just kind of cuts herself off, realizing that she's talking to Sydney about her
Yeah.
mother's murder, right? So it's just slowly we start getting a little bit of Sydney's history introduced, and how that's shaped her in the way that we see her in the movie, right?
Hmm.
And again, it I think that also gives her a kind of strength, right? Like the
It makes her an
everything that
interesting
she's had.
character. She's a relatable
Absolutely.
character, right? Like there's so many movies like this where we watch and you don't necessarily even remember the main girl, or even in like the
No,
later Scream movies. I'm not sure that that like holds up as well as it does in this
Mm-hmm.
one. Like I just thought, you could see yourself in her because she's struggling and we all struggle. Like that's how you can, and that to me was like the Kevin Williamson touch, right? Like
she's
that's
very
where,
relatable.
yes, he's over the top. Yes, like his teenage melodrama is like OTT, OTT, but he does know how to like write a teenager well enough that like there's something you can latch onto no matter who you
And it's
are.
believable, right? Because
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's so much writing in Hollywood for teenagers where they're clearly being played by 25-year-olds. And
Yes.
it when you hear them reading the lines, it doesn't seem believable. It doesn't seem like the
Hmm.
kind of things a teenager would say. regardless of the era that it's being written for, right? So
Mhm.
this is definitely a welcomed change to that kind of thing.
And
Yeah,
I
and I
also enjoy the fact that like the main character, female character, isn't portrayed as like overly sexualized character or a
No, she's not
character that's
hypersexualized or
sh- sh-
absolutely not.
yeah, and she's not also infantile either. Like she's not made into a little girl that can't, defend herself. There was just like a lot of like good balance of just this is a person in a situation trying to survive. And even Drew Barrymore's character like potentially could have survived, but of course, again, in a scary situation when you're running from people and you didn't know how many people, right? You're bound to get caught and murdered. That's just how
Yep.
it played out. But she could have survived that scenario too, because she did a really good job of defending herself. And there was a lot of like, that's what I found too, is like a lot of this was almost like showing you that like women being attacked or whatever has nothing to do with their appearance necessarily, or it almost plays that role in the rape culture where it's like showing you that it could be your boyfriend, and
Right.
and it doesn't have to be somebody you don't know, and it doesn't have to be a stranger, and it doesn't have to be because you're slutty, and it's so a lot of those things are in there too, which is really interesting because it's like you can almost say that Scream is kind of more feminist as a slasher film than
well, I
other,
think what I took from watching like who dies in the movie is that like this type of mania, this type of like whatever this behavior is, psycho behavior,
Mhm,
whatever the word is for it, it doesn't discriminate,
mhm,
right? Like you could be the principal of a school, you could be a young girl, you could be a young girl's mom. Like something can happen to you if, the wrong storm of like mental health stuff is happening to someone in your
mhm.
life, and that's how they choose to deal with it, right? Like, yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting movie. Like there's a lot going on in there. I wanted to talk about Gale Weathers a little bit too, because I thought that
Yeah.
was I missed again, like I didn't realize until watching it this time that she was actually like a tabloid reporter versus like a
Mm.
regular reporter. She's basically TMZ,
Yep.
but in the 90s, I completely like missed that she's kind of like trying to build a credible reputation for herself, and the way she's going to do that is by clearing Cotton Weary's name, right? Um, yeah, I don't know. I didn't pick up on that like the first times I watched it because I wasn't as interested in her as a character, but this time again because she's one of the older characters. She's like, and her walking into the high school party, that scene was also very, very funny to me. Like
Yes. Yeah.
she's walking in and there's these teenagers who are like, I watch your show every day. And she's like, oh, thank you, thank you. I'm like, could you imagine at this age walking into a high school party? Like just
Yeah, that
Hmm.
whole thing between her and Dewey was interesting because I you kind of caught that she had a thing for him, but then you kind of also
well, she's using
suspect,
him at first.
yeah, you suspect that
Yep.
she's using him, but then there's like this weird moment where they fall together and they kiss, and I was like, that's when I was like, wait, so she actually is into him? Because I the whole time I thought she was just playing him, so it
I
was
got
really
hints
kind
of
of
it
throwing me off.
earlier
Yeah.
on in the movie. There was just certain moments where I think
There's a
she
moment
kind of
where he
felt a little bit
flirts with her,
endeared by.
Yeah, and
right?
he's supposed to be
Yeah.
charming, but I found that obnoxious. So I was just like, did she find that charming? Like, I don't know. Like, does she find his ugly mustache charming? I mean, they end up marrying in real life after this film, right? Like,
Yep.
so
They
And
did.
yeah,
until they weren't,
yeah,
they
until
did
they were.
they did end up divorcing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they met and they fell in love on the set of this movie.
Later on,
So,
she rewatched the film and she was like, wait, what the heck was I thinking?
but you know what? She made some choices with her hair in later films. So
Yes, that's
we all
true.
go through, it was the 90s. We were
Even
all
in this film, her
experimenting.
hair choice was a little bit. It was no, it was what was the common thing at that time. It was doing the like coloring your hair, but like doing like the different layers
Mm.
of color, like the blonde with the brown
Highlight.
and highlights. Yeah, that's it. You got the word
Tell me you're a boy without telling me you're a boy.
exactly. Tell me your ski are rich. Yeah, but yeah, I I definitely enjoyed rewatching the film. There was a lot of good moments, and um, so what I also thought was interesting was that Skeet Ulrich made some remarks earlier in the film. I remember he brought up that when he climbs through the window, and then he tells he, he explains to what was the character's name now? I can't
Sydney.
remember. Sydney. That The Exorcist made me think of you. And like basically, more or less, basically, he was watching The Exorcist, and he's like, "I thought I should come over,"
Yeah,
and I'm
so
like,
I would
and I thought
I
like that kind of gives away a little bit that he's like the murdering type, a little bit, but
yeah, I wrote that down because I thought like again, this was like going back to how I remember, feeling like shocked that it was Billy and Stu at the end when I first saw it.
Mhm.
And kind of being like, yeah, like Billy, when he comes in initially, he's first of all very creepy. Second of all, he's talking about The Exorcist, and you know, it's setting it up so that yes, of course he did it. They're hooking up, and Don't Fear the Reaper is playing. Like it's it's
yeah,
very
that's the other
it
thing
feels
too. There
so
was like a little
obvious.
slow cover of "Don't Fear the
Mm.
Reaper" playing in the background, so it's kind of like hinting like, fear the Reaper. Don't fear
He
the
literally is in your bedroom
yeah,
right now.
he's right
But
now,
then like
yeah.
he doesn't talk
And
about movies again until the very end, right? So it's like
mm,
other than like you see him in the video store, so it's like okay, well he's obviously renting videos, but like you don't really think about it because at that point Randy is the one who's like super obsessed with movies, right?
and
Like
another
he's taken on that.
Right.
Yeah, and another note I was thinking of is like where these two guys decided to get their costume from, and like the costume they chose to wear was a costume called Father. What was it? Father Ghost or something like that.
Father
Yeah.
Death.
Father
Or death.
Death.
That's a
Father Death. Is there a trivia thing related to that? Like why they picked that costume specifically?
no, just in that the name itself, it wasn't the ghost face, but
Yeah, it was
rather
Father Death. Yeah, okay.
Father Death. Yeah, exactly.
Father Death was the costume on the plastic bag, but
Which,
like
interestingly enough, in
wasn't
that
it just
moment,
sister? It was Dewey's sister, right? That calls him like, "Go, hey, Ghostface." She goes, "Ghostface,"
yes,
or
it was Tatum
Mhm.
that says it. Interestingly enough, about that costume, they're talking about how they can't find, they're not going to be able to ID the killer because that costume is
Sold at every five and dime.
everywhere. Exactly. Well, as of 2023, that is the most sold Halloween costume of all time.
Which is kind of weird because like why?
Yeah. Right?
I guess because it's so simple. It's
I
so
mean,
simple.
I guess it is iconic, but like, I don't know,
Mhm.
just of all the like horror characters you could be, I don't know that Ghostface would be my top pick, but
No, exactly.
I mean, I like I like the idea of the costume, just because it's kind of silly, it's kind of goofy. But I definitely don't see it as the scariest costume for Halloween. And like I said, like
No, I agree. And it's
after
only
seeing
scary because after the movie Scream, prior to that, I don't know. I
yeah,
didn't.
and I mean, what was scary about the film was the shock value of like them popping out of nowhere, or like, and it's true, like the things where violence doesn't have to be out, like it doesn't have to be a big like thing to be scary, right? It doesn't have to be a guy with scissor hands,
Mhm.
to be a scary thing. It could just be a person with a knife, and that's enough to like make you run.
or it
Yeah.
could just be
And
someone on the phone
right,
that you
somebody on the
can't see,
phone,
right?
yeah.
And you don't know who that is. Like that first scene where she's on the phone, like that's very real. Like I remember that fear growing up in the 90s where it was like, you would someone would call and a good common prank call at that time was the heavy breathing, right? And
Mhm.
so you'd pick up the phone and someone would just be like, "Oh," like that's terrifying when you're, in the middle of the night or whatever, right? Or you're babysitting or that was definitely a big thing in the 80s and 90s and a lot of books were written about that as well. Like Goosebumps and R.L. Stein books kind of thing. But yeah,
Mhm.
so it's just again, like it doesn't have to be a demon, it doesn't have to be Freddy Krueger. It could just be someone on the phone. Like
Mhm.
My understanding is that the usage of call display after this movie shot up dramatically.
Yeah. And
Um,
wouldn't it?
pers-
Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see a lot of things changing subtly because it's almost like the scene with Randy screaming about like the cops are so stupid, they should just watch these movies and then they'd know how to do their jobs better, right? It's almost like somebody watched Scream and was like, hey, maybe we should do our jobs better.
Right?
Like, take a lesson from this. Like, yeah, murderers don't need motive. Like murderers don't need to be geniuses. They don't need to, they just need to have determination, like I was saying earlier.
Mhm.
Like they just need to really want to have to kill something.
determination and a dumbass friend.
A dumbass friend, yeah. I mean, they're both delusional. I think I find that the Stewie character is more, he's more the delusional type where he was like more fantasizing and fantilizing the things that he watched on TV, and that's why he was kind of goofier and funnier, because I don't think he was taking it seriously. Not until he started getting knifed himself that he was like, wait, this actually hurts. And then he like had this
Mhm.
like self-realization, like, oh shit, what have I been doing?
Yeah.
um and that's too late because he's dying, right?
God,
And
isn't that so relevant to how we're
mhm,
living now, where people have to experience something themselves to understand
to
that it hurt?
understand, yeah. So I
Mhm.
think that's where he was lost, where the other person very much was the leader of the pack, and definitely found an idiot that he could rely on and could trust, and he's the Dexter character while the other character is more like the guy he's controlling, like making him do what he needs to get done. And
Mhm.
so there was definitely a lot of that. Um, and I think almost like the other sad part of their friendship and their relationship and these two characters is that you could tell that there was like this almost like he was purposely killing all the people that were close to Stewie because he knew it hurt him, and it made him even deeper into this cause that he wanted him to, you know what I mean? Like, because at this point you've already killed your ex-girlfriend, you're gonna have to go further, right? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, otherwise, what have you done, right? Like, you're
Yeah,
gonna
to
be,
me that definitely felt like it would be intentional, right? Like,
yeah.
but Stu was also there when they killed Maureen.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
that like he
Mhm.
was involved in that as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, and like again, why wait the year? But then it might have just been that like Billy wanted this like very dramatic, I want this like perfect story and it's going to take time to plan. So, I mean, it takes A from Pretty Little Liars 30 seconds to plan something like that, but these are two dumb boys. So it's going to take us a year. Like
Yeah. And the other reason why I think it was wait, what was Skeet's character again?
Billy.
Billy, yeah, Billy. So the reason why I thought Billy was the one who murdered Dewey's sister is because she would have probably noticed when he grabbed her, like that, this, like, wait a second, I know who this is, right? Because based on him always holding her and hugging her and stuff, I think there would have been like too easy for her to not get fooled. She would have figured it out.
Oh, you're talking
And
about Tatum. Yeah,
Tatum,
so
yeah.
like to me, I thought that Billy killed Tatum as like a punishment for Stu because up until that point, Stu had said a couple of things that pissed Billy off,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
Like he was when they were around the fountain, Stu was like making comments and taking it too
Right,
far. And then when they were
right.
in the video store, same thing. Like he kept saying, and there was a moment somewhere where somebody was like, you're not a or Stu says, like, I'm not a killer. And Billy's like, no one said you were. Like, stop talking about this kind of thing. So to me,
Hmm.
I felt like that was like an F you because you're not behaving, right?
Yeah, like shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because again, that pops up a lot with, and I almost don't see the romantic Billy that she keeps imagining that he is. I
Nobody sees the romantic Billy
yeah,
Oh
from
yeah, nobody sees
day
we
that.
only
one.
Yeah.
ever
He's a
see,
monster,
yeah, we only ever see horny Billy or Billy when he's like
a creep,
a creep,
like,
yeah, or like
Absolutely.
violent. So it's really
or like not
weird.
understanding her at all. Like when he confronts her in the school, like that's a genuinely funny scene to me just because of how dramatic the dialogue is. But like he's confronting her and saying, get over your mom. Like,
Yeah,
it's been a
yeah,
year. It's
yeah,
been a year and I'm horny. Like,
yeah.
I'm tired of hearing about your dead mom. Like he
Bringing that
literally
up
says,
too,
get
like
over it.
we don't know whether or not, like, because there is talk about how she was raped and murdered, and we don't know if Billy actually was involved in the raping. I mean, we
Or if it
know
was
that,
Cotton who had sex with her and then, yeah,
yeah, because at the end of the day, that's what tied him to her, is that Cotton Weary was having sex with her, so therefore
he
his
was easy
sperm
to frame.
was found in her, so that's how they kind of related it to him having murdered her. I guess that's where maybe the rape was misinterpreted. Maybe there was no raping, but again, we don't know that for sure. And still, that
And we
just
also
makes it,
don't know for sure that Cotton didn't rape her either, right? Like just
yeah,
because they were having
No,
sex doesn't mean
exactly.
that he didn't rape her.
yeah.
But yeah, like we don't know any of that. And actually, I'm not even sure if they clear that up in the later movies because
Mm-hmm.
when we were watching this one, like you remember, I was like, she was raped? I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
that. Like they mention it very briefly at the very beginning, and then
Mm-hmm.
they don't really talk about it again. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something they just kind of like pushed aside and just focused on the fact that she was murdered. Um, yeah, that was something that jumped out to me this time because I was like, I do not remember that. So I feel like they didn't talk about it in the other movies, but maybe they did.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to watch them.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely have to follow up with
This
that.
is going to be a true crime podcast now. What happened to
Well,
Maureen Prescott?
I mean, we could always, spin off or something. Well, we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Fictional true crime podcast. I
when
love
we
it.
when we run out of 90s movies.
I'm all
Oh
in.
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the meantime, any other like fun trivia facts that you found out there?
So there were some interesting casting choices that came up potentially for this movie. So,
Okay.
um, the role of Sidney Prescott was actually offered to Claire Danes and Reese Witherspoon, both of
Ooh.
which, both of
Okay.
which
Hashtag not my
turned
Sydney.
down the role. Now, as far as who auditioned for the role of Sydney, we've got Melissa Joan Hart, Brittany Murphy, Melanie Linsky, and
Whoa.
then Melinda Clark and Alicia Witt.
Melinda Clark from the OC. Julie Cooper could have been Sydney?
Yes.
Whoa. That's
Yes.
wild. I don't, and you know what? The thing about Nev Campbell is she's such like a normal looking person. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like so many of those actors you just described, they were like quote unquote bombshells, right? And
Mhm.
like I just can't imagine this role being as relatable if you had had Brittany Murphy in it.
Well, because
Mhm.
you needed that girl next door look, right? That Nev
Yeah, that like
Campbell like
she
absolutely
could
has
be
because
me, she could be
she's
my
coming
friend,
from
right?
she was coming from Party of Five, and I think the movie that she had just done was The Craft, and in fact, she wasn't really interested in doing um Scream, but it was because Skeet was also in The Craft
Oh,
that he was able to
right.
convince her to do Scream.
I forgot about that. Well,
Yeah.
we only recently like I had never seen The Craft before and we watched it recently and I completely
Mhm.
forgot that he was in it. Oh my God.
Mm.
Wow. That's wild. I didn't know that.
All
What
So,
else you
right.
got?
um, more casting choices for Gail Weathers, Brooke Shields was nearly cast as her.
She would have been
After
good, I think.
hold on a second,
Mhm.
and that's after Janine Garofalo turned down the role.
Oh, that would have been so good.
Right.
I mean,
So, I mean,
Courtney Cox was
this could have been
amazing.
a
She was
very,
iconic.
very different movie, right?
It would have been more funny, I think.
With
Mhm.
Janine, yeah, absolutely, it would have.
Yeah, 'cause not that Courtney Cox isn't like a good comedic actor, she is, but she definitely didn't play it funny. Well, a little bit, but I feel
A
like
little
Janine
bit.
would have played it more
Yeah.
funny. Um, Interesting. That's so weird to picture.
Melinda Clark, the actress, turned down the role of Tatum.
Okay.
Okay.
She would have been a
Uh,
perfect Tatum for sure.
I don't know what role it was, but Chloe Sevigny, she auditioned for a role. I wasn't
Okay.
able to pin down what role she actually auditioned for.
I mean, probably it would have been Sydney, no?
My thought is probably, yeah.
because she was pretty famous at that time.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't Nev Campbell, I couldn't imagine. Trying to think who else at that time would have been. I guess it would have been what's her name, Joey from
Yeah, it
Dawson's
would have been
Creek.
Katie Holmes,
Katie
right? Like
Holmes. Katie
to
Holmes would have
me,
been a good,
the
yeah.
most shocking thing about what you said, Eric, is that you didn't say that the role was written for Katie Holmes. Like,
Yeah.
but maybe he purposely didn't want to go that route just because again, like I had no idea that it was the same writer
Same
until
writer.
I
Yeah.
was
I mean, it would have
older.
been interesting if he had casted the same actors.
Dawson Goes Bad.
You know, and the whole Dawson's Creek spinoff, and it just turns into
And
like
I
he's a
guess
murderer. Yeah.
like Randy was also very Dawson too, right? Like Dawson was such a sad sack.
What it's
Mhm.
funny you
And
mentioned Randy because there were a couple of other actors that were up for the role of Randy, which is
really,
Breckin Meyer,
okay.
and Jason Lee. Um,
Huh. I feel like
they
Breckin Meyer
were
could have done it.
the
Yeah.
three of them were in the final callback, and that's when Jamie Kennedy ended up getting the role
I mean, good for Jamie
among
Kennedy,
the
but
three of
like
them.
he definitely had a niche, and he had a value for like a good amount of time in the early 2000s,
Yeah,
and then just kind of like disappeared, like faded a little bit. But he did a good job of building himself up during that time. Like, yeah, good
And Randy was
choice.
a great character. I thought he did Randy very
Yeah.
well.
Hmm.
That was because yeah, that was us as the audience. We're into movies and we don't understand what's going on, but we think we know what's going on because we've seen movies and we know how this goes, right? Like I thought that was all really well
yeah.
done.
Now,
Yep.
just on another point on casting, this is just for two existing actors. David Arquette and Matthew Lillard were they were both initially considered for the role of Billy before being cast as Dewey
Mm.
and Stu, respectively.
Matthew
Now,
Lillard as
Arquette
Billy,
also
I wouldn't have
he
liked. I
also
don't think
went
so.
for the role of Stu, so it looks like David Arquette was going for anything that stuck, I guess.
Yeah. He's like, please, just give me a
just
job.
just give me a
Oh,
job and a job.
one last one
I
for
mean, I don't
Randy.
blame David
Seth
Arquette because
Green.
like what else was
Seth
going
Green
for him?
also auditioned for the role of Randy.
Seth Green and Jamie Kennedy are like interchangeable to me. If I picture them in that role, right? Like either one of them could have done it, I think, and done it well.
Yeah,
On
but you know what?
on
You know what? Looking back though, I think I like
the cast.
I think Jamie Kennedy to me is better. It was a better choice than Seth Green only because I find sometimes Seth Green's version of that
Too
same
much.
character a little bit too yeah, he's almost irritating.
Too much.
And I
I agree.
actually recently when I was watching that 90s show because he's come back into doing a little bit of acting in that 90s show and he plays the character that's still obsessed with Donna or not Donna with anyway with one of the characters and so whatever his character is he just it's like over the top it's like super dramatic he's such a loser and I don't
Mhm.
think that Randy is supposed to be that much of a loser, you know what I mean, like he's still
No,
supposed to
he
be
hangs out with the cool
No.
kids, right? Like,
yeah
and that was very like 90s cool, right? Like they're all partying and doing drugs, I'm assuming. And
and I think
He's
like
the
Seth
film
Green plays
nerd
the
that hangs
loser
out with
too
the cool
well.
kids,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
yeah, and not the cheerleaders, not the jocks, but the cool kids, like that. When
Hmm.
you see them around the fountain, I was like, absolutely, I would not be invited to their party. Like those are cool kids.
Now, in this one kind of made me laugh when I found out about this one. So another actress that auditioned for the role of Gail and was immediately turned down
Oh no.
was Elizabeth Berkley.
Oh,
Oh
that's
no,
sad for
why?
her. Was that because of
It was
Showgirls?
it was in large part due to the backlash received by Showgirls. Yeah, I mean
That
that
Oh
sucks. I mean, I
really?
don't think she would
Oh.
have been a
killed her
good Gail
career.
Weathers, but
I don't
that's
know.
sad for her.
She would have been a horrible Gail Weathers, but it would have been so campy. It would have been so like, yeah, I think so. I think it would have been interesting.
I
She would
like
have,
the idea of Brooke Shields as Gail Weathers. I think that would have been
yeah,
cool.
yeah, that's
That
I think
true.
she
that
would
would
have.
have been good. Yeah,
But I do
Actually,
like
you're
Courtney
right
Cox did a good job.
because you need her to be funny, but you need her more to be like look like a serious like reporter, right? And
Well,
I think
if you have her too funny, then you pairing
yeah,
her with Dewey doesn't make sense, right? Like she
yeah.
has to be the straight character to Dewey in a lot of ways, or like the character that's more savvy than Dewey, which is
Yeah.
Mhm.
funny because it's like almost a commentary on police work too, right? Like the reporter knows more about what's going on and how to get information and how to like find out who this killer is than the actual cop does. Like,
Yeah. And the final thing I like to say is like I like this film compared to other like slasher films because again there's like less of that that breaks that barrier of like that imbalance in physical ability, right? Like where it's like a lot of other slasher films it's like you got like
Michael Myers,
Michael
who's
Myers who can just lift
6 feet
Mhm.
somebody up with
tall.
one hand, yeah, and just like toss them. Where here it's like, no, you could probably fight this guy, if you gave it a good try.
I mean, it's
But
Stu
but it's
Macher. He's not exactly an athlete.
but it's
No,
the
no,
idea
he's
of
not.
it's the idea of intention is like if you're not willing to go through with killing him he's going to kill you, and
Hmm.
so
Yep.
that is the real scary part here. It's like it's not about their strength, it's again it's like this like breaking that wall of like it has nothing to do with having a big guy or the guy being smarter or more or faster or anything. It's just about intention and then taking the time and
And
doing
luck. A lot of it
and
is luck
yeah, and
too.
luck. Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
I did do a little bit of digging, and I was able to find the reason for Kenny's death. If
Okay.
you guys are ready for it. So, like I said it before, it was longer and more graphic, which kind of is the reason why it was cut. So, in the
Okay.
earlier cut of the movie, he basically stared Ghostface in disbelief, basically questioning why he was being killed. I mean, realistically, he's got nothing to do
With
with
anything.
anything going on there. He's literally just like a bystander. He's just the guy holding the camera, basically. Um, so questioning why he's being killed while blood flows from his neck. So, and it was cut, I think, just due to the graphic nature because it would have given the movie an NC-17 rating,
Oh,
which
at the time.
apparently,
Yeah.
happened a ton during this movie.
Yeah,
The MP,
probably
the
during
motion
that time.
picture,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
the Motion Picture Association of America really had a hard time with this movie. Apparently,
Yeah, what
it
is
was
it? What was
const
this film out? 96?
96.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
96 is like when NC-17 that whole thing was like exploding everywhere where all of a sudden everybody was worried about their films being cut because they're too
so, so
Yeah, I guess
according to
I'm
Wes
graphic.
Craven,
confused.
yeah. So according to
Sorry, I've just
Wes Craven, no, that's okay. Because
go
of the
ahead.
cut, because of the way they ended up cutting that scene, it
Mhm.
removed all the humanity from the actual scene and the murder of Kenny, and it just
Mm.
Hmm.
kind of just made it another sensationalized killing rather than having a purpose, right? And
Right.
that's why it just looks so awkward. It's just he's kind of there and then
It was
just
very
dead, and
strange.
then
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
it
So
felt
he
what's
was
the
kind of in
sorry,
the way. He was kind of in the way. It was like, why should I deal with him? Might as well just kill him and then get through. Yeah, I don't
before
know.
we jump off this, like what makes that death more graphic than Casey's boyfriend in the beginning being gutted or her being gutted?
Right,
it's.
and
I
gutted
I
and
have a
hung.
feeling.
Like,
I'm wondering if it isn't just how long blood is shown, like for how long and how much is shown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know
Because I was gonna
the
say those
specifics
two
of it.
that first scene is very gory. So
It is.
I'm just
It
like
is. I actually forgot how gory that was.
mhm.
so did
Um,
I.
and I'm actually surprised that they left that and that wasn't cut.
If they
Um,
were that concerned about, Kenny having his throat slit, like interesting.
so I do have one last hilarious fact
Mhm.
in this movie. It's for Rose McGowan's character, Tatum. So apparently she was so tiny when she was in the pet door in the garage, she kept falling out.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
so they actually had to nail her shirt to the inside of the garage door to keep her from falling out.
Oh my
Uh,
God. I thought you were going to say they put her in a fat suit or something so that she would actually like stick in there. Oh my God. That is another story altogether as to how alarming that is, because that's a very small opening.
And also, she says that this was, out of her entire movie career, this is her favorite movie that she's ever done. And
Yeah, it would be
I
mine
mean,
too.
she was great in it. She really was.
yeah,
Yeah,
she was great,
she was
and
having
like,
fun. You could tell she was having fun.
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
She got to wear like all her fun clothing, like different clothing, and like
Apparently,
play as a
she
teenager.
still has her Scream bottle of wine that everybody on the cast was given when they
Oh,
did
really?
their cast party at the very end. Yeah, so it
I
seems like
mean
it was a
that
very,
if I
very
had been
memorable
in a movie
experience
like
for her.
Scream, yeah, I would want to remember that forever. Yeah,
I would
that's
too,
Yeah.
absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, apart from the opening scene, which at this point has become iconic, everybody knows that, the answering of the phone, or,
The
you know, the
popcorn.
the popcorn, that singular phrase, do you like scary movies? Right?
Well,
Like
you know what's
that's
funny is
Mhm.
like even to this day, it's funny because I learned so much from this film just watching it
Mhm.
about other scary movies in the sense that like somebody I the other day I brought it up as like a trivia fact where I was like, oh, who was the killer in the first Friday the 13th movie,
Oh
and
yeah.
and everybody always answers Jason Voorhees because that's what you think of when you think Friday the 13th, but it was Mrs. Voorhees, right? That
Mhm.
because she was killing them, that it was important that they brought that up at the beginning of the film too, when they were asking her the question like, who was it? And it's Mrs. Voorhees, because she was killing them because they were all sinners, right? And they were all doing something that teenagers shouldn't be doing. Like she'd catch them in the shower or like whatever, and then she would be murdering them because also to get revenge for her son, right? For Jason,
Exactly. And again, that kind of speaks to one of the motivations there
right?
in
The mother
of our
son
murders.
relationship,
The
right? Because
exactly
it's
the
the yeah,
Well, and then
it's
they
that
bring that back in the second movie, right? Like it's literally Mrs. Voorhees, Billy's
Mrs.
Mrs.
Voorhees.
Loomis,
Yeah,
Billy's
yep,
mom is the killer in the second movie because she's avenging her son.
exactly,
So it's
yep,
really
exactly.
clever that
exactly.
they did it that way.
Yeah, yeah. So it was really like a lot of it is what's nice about it. It was clever because it was all done on purpose, but it also, like you said in the beginning, the first time you watch it, you're gonna be tricked because there's a lot of red herrings, and he does a good
Mhm.
job of throwing you off, and to
The
a point
entire
where you
movie does it
almost
to you, and it
almost
does it
assume that Sydney
perfectly.
might be the killer. Like, and
Yeah,
later on in the
exactly.
films, they kind of play on that because it's like because even in the first film, you never know. Like it could have been her because she's the one toughing it out and not like the surviving all of these
Well, that's
people
just saying,
She
like
was
in
the
this
one
the
who
film.
suspiciously had the deaf typer ready to go on her computer the first time she was attacked
right,
to call 911. So
exactly.
The thing that these movies rather, they do so well is that as soon as someone's left alone, they get that phone call, and then it's the quote unquote voice over the phone, and you don't know who it is, right? Because you can't ID the voice, so it could literally be anybody, even the person that was just with that character in the previous scene, right? So
Yeah.
it's that
yeah,
constant sense of not knowing who it is, and it's anxiety provoking, right? And that is what's so good about the movie, is that it doesn't need to have those jump scares, because the anxiety that you get from just the not knowing is enough.
Hmm. Yep, definitely they played on all those fun things. And I mean, at the end of the day, would I recommend this as a movie I would watch as a 13-year-old kid? Probably not, because I'd get too scared.
but also like it would be
But
hard if you don't understand the tech, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Maybe no, maybe not. Maybe you know what? Maybe younger kids would watch this and get like a whole other. I would love to interview, like a 13-year-old after watching this film now, and see what the impression would be. Because I think there's a lot of this like extreme violence and sexualization and a lot of other stuff that we watch now for younger viewers, and I wonder if their impression would be the same, or if it's not enough. Like maybe this film is just not doesn't have the same impact on people like it used to,
I
or
feel like a kid today wouldn't find it scary.
hmm,
No, I would tend to agree. I think they've
Yeah.
been exposed to a lot more and a lot worse.
And a lot more like psychological stuff too now with like horror.
Mhm.
So like it's next level now with some of the movies that are coming out now. Whereas this one, it wasn't so much like some of it was psychological, but like in terms of the fear process, but it wasn't like a psychological horror. Like it was a slasher, right? So
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And I think again, one of the big things about this movie was that it kind of reinvigorated the whole slasher movies. I mean, shortly after this one came out, Kevin Williamson sold How I Know What You Did Last Summer, and that was an
yes,
instant
Right.
hit, right?
Right. Yep.
In fact, that one he wrote that script first based on a book or novel rather, and nobody was remotely interested in it, so he kind of just put it on the shelf, came up with Scream, and then with the success of Scream, he took it off the shelf, did some rewrites, and sold it in no time, right?
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank goodness, because I loved I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah.
That's a great one too. Yeah.
Those were really good 90s, flicks. Okay, well, I appreciate the time that we took to dissect this film, and we're running out of time, of course, as usual, but it was really fun chatting, and yeah, I thought that was a really fun dissection, and hopefully we can do some more in the future with Iris,
Absolutely.
but definitely
Yeah,
with
thanks for
Eric,
having
you'll be
me.
hearing some more with us, and
Always.
yeah. Yep, and we'll come back with another movie shortly, and enjoy the rest. Have a great day.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Give me that in the city chair. Jump around in my whip, itty bitty, looking pretty chill. Put my shades on, you ain't even seen it yet. Man, I'm so fresh, and you know I'm always spelling chill. Give me what you want, what you got, cause I never get enough. You ask me how I want it, and you say you want a chance on me. Chances so you don't know how to do this shit respectfully. I say it like it rough, cause I need a man protecting me. I ain't say this shit for later. I said, baby, come and get it. Feels taking over if you let him. I'ma take the paper, I'ma roll it up for later. He might do what he wanted, cause I let him. Give me something that I'm never gonna forget, because baby, I'm the only one you gotta impress. I won't take any more and I won't take any less. I'm the queen in this, you know I got the finesse. Give me that, give me that, give me that. Give me that feeling. Bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. Like when we were young. Like when we were young. Like when we were young.
Bring it back, yeah, just bring it back. Sitting in the back, yeah, I'm rolling up some Trinidad. Feeling like the bestest, always got the best shits. Come around, baby, yeah, you knowin' who the best is. And that's just for the record, so y'all don't get it twisted. I ain't talking cheesy, but no, I'm buzzing, listen. You don't wanna miss it when you get the feeling. It'll make you feel explicit like a new addiction, baby, it'll take a hold. I know you're feeling cold, cause I've been feeling cool. You give me all these feelings that I used to have in school. These butterflies got me feeling light, like I'm floating through the air, hanging out like a satellite. Yeah, it's really got me feeling right. All around me, yeah, looking like a ceiling light. Hanging out, where the heather glows. See me from the center of the earth with no time.